what I want to talk to you guys about is not blowing your reads. Seriously. And this is probably one of the biggest culprits I have experienced in my many, many years of acting training and public speaking. And this isn't something that is just done with actors. It's done with newscasters, broadcasters, public speakers. I mean, anybody that opens their mouth to talk will generally be blowing this until they figure it out, or they just have it because they were raised with proper English understanding. So it's called the referential callback. And I'm going to do a deep dive into the callback and let you guys know what it is, what it isn't, and how to operate with it more effectively. And I'll tell you, if you're listening to this right now and you have any friends that communicate with their voice anyway, as an on-camera actor, a radio personality, a public speaker, it doesn't make a difference. Referential callbacks are blown all the time. And if you have this information, that's one thing. Then you've got to go to work on this information. Then you've got to master it so that it integrates into the way that you speak so you don't flatline your dialogue. And what I mean by flatlining your dialogue is this. I will just over dramatize this. So, Bob, how are you? Everything good? Fantastic. That was a lovely time we had last night. You left your wallet at the party, but I have your wallet right here. So if you want your wallet, just let me know. It's really difficult when you lose your wallet. That's just a flatlined read, which means there's absolutely no melody to it. There's no inflection to it. It's just flatlining. Now, you could be giving a really great read, but then you stumble across a referential callback that you most likely will not even know about. And you will hit this nice read and boom, you will flatten that part of your dialogue out and then pick it back up again. So think of this as a little bit more of a specialty teaching for the artists that really care about wanting to give effective reads and pull off powerful performances. Outside of that, I see it blown all the time. Even in movies and television shows, I see it happen with public speakers often. Now, let's talk about a referential callback, what that is, what it means, and then we're going to do a deep dive into that. And by the time you are through this teaching, wherever you're watching this, you're going to be so much more versed in not flatlining referential callbacks. But to be honest with you, I've been working with actors for years that can't figure this out. And I never thought it was that big of a deal. But apparently it's a lot bigger of a deal than I even thought about, because I can go through an entire intensive on this and then have somebody actually blow their reads by flatlining their callbacks in the same day. So it's pretty important. And I'm actually going to be teaching this in all of my classes this week here at CBSI, Claybank Studio International. I am here right now in my studio. I'm set up. I have my producers here helping make this whole thing happen so we can bring you the latest and greatest in what's going on in effective performances. All right, so let's do a deep dive. Referential callbacks, what are they? Let's talk about the callback and what it's most commonly known as. Callbacks, well, a callback has a lot of different definitions. It could be anything from a product that's gone south to a company having to call it back. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about it in the literal sense. And in literature, callbacks are most commonly associated with comedy because they have a powerful, powerful impact when they're used properly. And what a callback is used as and for is when a comic will either knowingly or unknowingly, knowingly if they write it into their act, unknowingly if they stumble across it and they catch it and they're able to capitalize on it, will produce humor. It elicits an emotional response just by the nature of what it is. That's how powerful it is. So, for example, let's say a comic is setting up something and they bring in the Snicker bar. And they bring in the Snicker bar at the beginning of their act, and somehow they make a reference to how when they were little they really enjoyed Snicker bars. Now I'm writing this off the top of my head, but just trying to give you an idea. Now they go into their act, and they're going all the way through, and they're getting ready to close their act. And they close their act, and they say, so that's why you've always got to be careful when you're in those situations and have a Snicker bar. The audience will recall that Snicker bar being set up at the beginning of the act, And because the comic brought it back in at the end of the act, it'll elicit that emotional response. It just works that way. It's just part of those mechanisms. That's comedy has a series of mechanisms, and when you apply those mechanisms, you tend to get the laugh. That's how that works. So we're not going to talk about this just for comedic setup. We're going to talk about this with everyday language, monologuing and dialoguing, and how you cannot blow it. Now, I would imagine some people are seeing this on the breakdown and it says referential callbacks, and they're going, I don't know if I want to listen to that. That's because you don't know how powerful it really is. For those of you guys that are listening, you're going to get it. That's why I'd like you to share this with your friends. So here's what we're going to do. And for some of these platforms that aren't able to see the Stream Deck, we might need to do that funny little thing we were trying a couple weeks ago, where we can put the iPad in front. So are you ready for that? Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to explain to you through a graph what the callback actually looks like. Okay. So here, if you can see it coming up on my screen with the fancy technology for wherever that it's coming up. It's coming up on some platforms, and I guess IG it's not coming up. We haven't figured it out for Instagram yet. Okay. So this is just a simple little diagram that starts off right over here with the story, where the story starts and the story ends. And this could be anything from a one-liner to an entire 2-hour script. Anything. It doesn't make any difference. What happens is, as the scene progresses, somewhere one of these dots, these little circles that are right here, is something that's been established at the beginning of the dialogue or the story. Then through more of these little circles, more of the story goes on until we get further into the story, where one of those circles actually identifies back to the circle that it was set up with. This is called the callback. This is now acknowledging that there's a callback to something that has been already established. So I'm just laying out the definition. Don't let this confuse you. I'm going to bring in copy and scripts and show you how this all comes together. So by the time I'm done with this teaching, you're going to have a lot more solid understanding of what this means. Okay? So all this graph is showing you is there's a beginning to the story, whether it's one line or an entire full 2-hour script, and then there's an end to the story. And in between there's going to be setups that will be brought back up again, and that is the call back. So let's take a look at a script and see how this works. We're going to go with a very clean script here. Let's go with this copy right here, which is basically just a guy-girl scene. And if you see here at the top, it's a guy and a girl, and she says, I write mostly for myself, but I also have a small column in a little magazine. He says, wow, that's fantastic. She says, yeah, it's really no big deal. And he goes on into saying, no, I think it's great. I've never met a professional writer before. I've never met a professional anything. Oh, it's nice to say that. And then he says, no, I mean it. What magazine would I find your column in? Now, she's going to go on into talking about the magazine that she writes for. He's going to go on into responding that he actually reads that magazine. Okay, so that's what the script looks like when you get it. Now, I don't know, but to yourself, for those of you that are watching, it'd be kind of hard if you weren't watching, but for those of you that are watching, what's being called back? Look at the words that appear more than one time. So, through the technology, I'm pointing it out to you. Now we take a look and we see that the word that's being called back is magazine. Magazine is used throughout the entire page of dialogue, and this is like a 4-page interaction with these two characters. Okay, so we see the script normally like this. This is how people are going to read it. But what your eyes need to become trained to is what's repeating itself. So in this case, we're seeing magazine all over. Now, I've underlined the callback, the word that's been called back, but I've also circled how you handle the callback and what you do when you get to the callback to keep it from being flatlined. So she says, I write, and I have this column in a little magazine. That sets up the callback. Now, you don't know it's coming until you read through the copy, and through your script analysis and scene study, you're picking these things up so that you don't make these flat-lined mistakes. The bottom of that little section, he says, no, I mean it. What magazine would I find your column in? Now, here's how it sounds when it's not read properly. And I'm going to put the two paragraphs together. I write mostly for myself, but I also have a small column in a little magazine. He says, what magazine would I find your column in? Magazine, magazine. Now, the rule of the callback is that you have to adjust the modifier or the descriptor. And the descriptor or the modifier is the word or the sequence of words that precedes the called back word. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of stuff, and a lot of actors going, oh my gosh, it's an English class. Guess what? If you don't learn this as an actor and you're not up on your English, you're not going to have much of a career, because you can't be blowing this. Why? Because the writer who does understand English, if they're any good, spends a lot of time constructing the scripts that the actors are using, because that's what they want communicated. And it's the writer's job to be the seeing eye dog, the actor's job to be the seeing eye dog for the writer. Our job is to interpret what the writer is saying. And this is what I'm helping you with. So the descriptor or the modifier is what comes right before the word that's being called back. So in this case, magazine is being called back. So you got magazine, and then you got magazine again, then we got magazine 3 more times. So watch how this happens, but I want to start with this time right here. So I write for a little magazine. What magazine? That's not the way to read that line, because magazine's already been established. I write for a magazine. What magazine? Listen to this. I write for a little magazine. What magazine? Because the magazine has already been established, the emphasis goes on the modifier, which in this case is what. What magazine? Okay, then she goes on into saying in the next paragraph, it's called Interest Now. It sounds like a financial guy, but it's not. It mostly covers things of a personal nature, which you wouldn't expect to find in most other magazines, not in most other magazines, because the magazine has already been established. Stay with me, because when you get this, it will rock your world and it will change your reads. So it's not, I write for a little magazine. What magazine? Other magazine. I write for a little magazine. What magazine? Other magazines. That's the descriptor. That's the modifier. Then it goes on. He says, no. I know the magazine. He doesn't say, I know the magazine. This has to do with alliteration. And it's important for you to get your ears dialed into proper alliteration. Now, alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound that's connected with the words. Alliteration, meaning tuning your ears to the melody and the rhythm and the sound of the dialogue that you're learning, and not just trying to memorize it. So alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning or adjacent to or closely connected to the words. It means the rhythm and the sound, the alliteration that it has. A lot of rap, spoken word works a lot with alliteration. The play Hamilton, all about alliteration. I mean, that's pretty much what that is all about, and In the Heights and that whole style. So keep going with me on this script here through the magazines. Okay, so we're back here to, yes, I mean it, I do. I've been reading that magazine for years. I love it. So again, we got magazine again, and the modifier or the descriptor would be reading that. So the line wouldn't be magazine, 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 and then the guy would say, oh no, I've been reading that magazine for years. I love it. Because it's putting emphasis on what's already been presented as opposed to the new piece of information, which is now reading that magazine. So the line wouldn't be, I do, I've been reading that magazine for years. It's, I've been reading that magazine for years, because they're talking about magazine through this whole stretch of dialogue. Now, these words come up in all kind of places, in all kind of ways. I'm going to show you a few. I'm going to show you a few more examples of this. Okay, and it gets tricky. And it just has to do with your capacity to be able to process what I'm talking to you about. And I'm really trying to keep this simple, but some things are just a little more complicated, but you have to figure them out if you don't want to get caught flatlining your dialogue. Because I'll tell you, you're going to go into an audition. A whole bunch of people are going to be reading the same dialogue. And a lot of people are going to come in very much the same. So it could be between you and 2 or 3 or 4 other people, and you're all doing a great job in the audition. However, you're flatlining callbacks through your read, and another actor isn't. Well, I cast, and I train actors all the time. You're going to go with the person that's nailing the dialogue, not the person that's missing that. So that little thing could make a huge difference on whether you receive a yes or a no, and this is what I want to help you with this. So let's finish this off and take a look at it again. Again, this is how the copy is going to look for you, and this is what's not jumping out that I'm pointing out. Now, here's where it gets a little bit trickier, and it's going to get trickier and trickier and trickier through the rest of this talk. So those of you that are catching this, stay with me. You'll be geniuses by the time we're done, okay? If you've already fallen off, well, there's your capacity. So we're moving on. Okay. Now, look what happens down at the bottom of this copy. At the bottom of this copy, something tricky happens. This is called a conceptual callback. And a conceptual callback is when the actual word isn't being called back, but the meaning or the concept of the word is being called back, and it works the same way. So look at this. Magazine, 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 magazine. We're talking about a magazine 5 times. The writer is using that word in this one exchange of dialogue on this one page. And yet it ends at the bottom where it says, yes, I've been reading that magazine for years. I love it. And she says, that's great. And then he says, yeah, I read through it so fast that I read through it so fast that I get upset because I have to wait a whole month for the new one to come. What's the new one? It's a magazine. So here you have a reference being brought to the new one, which is also a 6th time that the word magazine is being used on this page of dialogue, except it's being written as a new one. Look at how it blends in. You're not even going to see that unless you train not just your eyes, but your ears for alliteration and your mind for understanding. Yeah, you need some brains to be a really good actor. You've got to use all your body parts to get them to work together so that you can really be effective in what it is that you're doing. So look at it again. Here we go. All right. He says, magazine, 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 magazine. Yeah, I read through it so fast that I get upset because I have to wait a whole month for the new one to come. Now, the rules on this, as you notice, I have it circled and underlined because it's referencing magazine, and an emphasis needs to be placed on the actual word this time. So it does start to get a little tricky, but I just want to keep this with a basic understanding, so I'm going to move on to another example of this. So again, just to be clear, you've got to watch for it. And I tell my actors, look, if this is confusing to you, just go through the copy and see words that are repeating themselves. And when they're repeating themselves, pay attention to it, read them, and listen. And then look at the modifiers. Look at the descriptors. Look at the word or the group of words that sets up the word that's being called back. Okay, let's go on to another piece of copy. All right, so here we got something a little bit more tricky. This is a stylized piece that was written and performed to play on callback words, alliteration, grammar, and so many other mechanisms. It's a stylized piece. One of the actors plays a person called motivator, and the other actor plays man. And if you see here, this is how the script is going to look. Let me ask you something, every person. Have you ever had a dream? What are you talking about? A dream. Have you ever had a dream? Well, yeah, of course. I mean a real dream. Of course I have. This is Hollywood, right? Yeah, this is Hollywood. Hollywood. And has that dream come true? Well, no, it hasn't. Yet, it hasn't. Though, no, it hasn't. So, on this page, there are 3 words that are being called back. In this one simple piece of dialogue, which really isn't simple, it's actually quite complex, you've got 3 different callbacks that are taking place, and I want to hone in on it. Are your eyes seeing it? Okay, here we go. This is what it looks like when it pops out. Now, I haven't capitalized on the 3rd one, but I'll get to that. And this is how this is going to work. Man says, what are you talking about? Motivator says, a dream. Have you ever had a dream? Now, in that one line of dialogue, guys, it's called back by the same person in that one line in 2 sentences. A dream. Have you ever had a dream? Now, if he's making the impact that he's trying to drive home dream, then he goes, a dream. Have you ever had a dream? But in reference to the teaching I'm giving you right now, it's a dream. Have you ever had a dream? Because had is the modifier. Have you ever had a dream? And he says, well, yeah, everybody dreams. Now it's called back again. Everybody dreams. Everybody dreams. Everybody dreams. But dream and dreams are not the same word. That's why I didn't circle it. See, it gets a little tricky. That's why you should get started on this right away. No, I mean a real dream. No, I mean a real dream. It doesn't work the same way. Have you ever had a dream? I mean a real dream. No, have you ever had a dream? I mean a real dream. And the reason I'm repeating this is to help key in your ear so that your ear is getting dialed in a little bit more to what actually is going on with referential callbacks, because these things slip by all the time. And it's the difference between a wonderful performance and a good performance. And you should put your ear and eye to this, like right away. The next movie or show you watch later today or tonight or whatever, listen for it specifically, and listen for it, and you'll start to develop an ear for the flatlining. And you'll see, ooh, that line didn't work, and you'll start to catch yourself. Now, I have a lot of students in the studio that haven't quite yet figured this out. I have a lot of students that have graduated through my classes who have not figured it out because they just aren't able to get this. And then I have actors that get it. They get it, and they actually catch themselves flatlining and make the correction. Okay? Now, when I say flatlining, it's the same thing as the medical profession. In the medical profession, what does it mean to flatline? It means you're dead, and that's what happened with your reed. It died. You flatlined your reed. All right, so now let's move forward here. So listen to it. What are you talking about? A dream. Have you ever had a dream? Well, yeah, everybody dreams. That's a new meaning. No, I mean a real dream. Well, of course I have, man. This is Hollywood. Now, Hollywood is being repeated. This is Hollywood, not this is Hollywood. This is Hollywood. Listen how flat that sounds. The man says, this is Hollywood. The motivator says, this is Hollywood. No, that doesn't make sense. That's not what the writer wrote. Although that's what the words say, that's not what the meaning is. The line is, this is Hollywood. This is Hollywood. You hear the difference? You got to catch that. And if you're picking up on this, taking your knowledge of referential callbacks to the next level will have you even working the lines better, which I'll show you in the third piece in the third. I'll show you in the third sample when I do this, and what happens when that happens, because then it starts to get really, really tricky, and you can start tuning your ear to really giving wonderful performances. Now, when I listen to the great actors perform, I mean, you know, wonderful actors like your Daniel Day-Lewis's and your Meryl Streeps and Cate Blanchett's and Ray Fiennes. I mean, these amazing top-of-the-heap people act. You listen, and they are working with the dialogue in such ways it's just poetry. And then you throw on a procedural at 8 o'clock on any given channel on any weeknight, and you're like, oh gosh, it's, you see the difference, I mean, and so it's about training for the artistry of what it is that you're doing. So let's finish this piece of copy off. Again, this is what the copy looks like when you're just reading and memorizing, and here's what your eyes have to start to see. Now look what happens. He says Hollywood again, and the writer has written it out. So it goes, this is Hollywood, this is Hollywood. And he goes, Hollywood. So the writer has intentionally showed you, look, you've got to read this line differently. Then the motivator says, okay, Huey Lewis, and has that real dream come true? Not has that real dream come true, has that real dream come true? Why? Because they're talking about dreams, they turned it into real dreams, and now he's calling back the real dreams. This is a little bit more advanced, but this happens throughout copy all the time. And just you listening to this teaching is going to raise your awareness to the importance of the referential callback and not blowing your reeds. Now, I didn't cover it, but at the bottom, he goes, well, no, it hasn't. The motivator says it hasn't. The man says, yet, no, but it hasn't. That gets a little tricky. That's a little bit more stylized, and I don't want to go ahead and get into that right now. So again, in bringing you into the third and more advanced part of this, okay, just to capitalize on this and to get it to be very, very clear for you, you see words that are repeating themselves, look at the words in front of them, the descriptors or the modifier, and work with that, putting your emphasis on that, and then rehearse the lines back until you hear them coming to life and not just flatlining right out. Okay? That's the importance of the referential callback and the conceptual callback, meaning other words to use to explain the same word. Okay? All right, now let's make it really complicated for you. Ready? I'll go to another place of this stylized performance. Here's what the copy looks like, and you can read it along. Man and motivator. Well, I think I'm probably talking for every person here. You're talking for every person here? I don't think we covered this. No, we didn't. Yeah, every person here. So let me get this straight. You're telling me that you're representing every person. Yeah, why not? I'm representing every person. I'm every person. That's my name. I mean, all I'm saying is what every person here is probably thinking, okay? Okay, Mr. Every person, just every person. Okay, every person. All right. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's being repeated here and what the callback word is, but the tricky part is it's being used to mean different things. And that's where it gets a little tricky. So let's put on our special X-ray glasses here, our callback glasses, and see what the modifiers or the descriptors are. Well, I think I'm probably talking for every person here. That's establishing the word every person for the first time. And in this case, it's all in capital letters because capital letters tells you that something is coming in for the first time. That's what this writer wrote. It's not necessarily how you're always going to get it, okay? So, the motivator says, you're talking for every person here. He doesn't say, you're talking for every person here. I'm every person. It lays flat. You're talking for every person here. Yeah, every person here. Now attention is being brought to this because this is in your face. This is an in-your-face callback. That's why I'm using it as an example. Then the motivator says, yeah, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that you're representing every person. There's a dual meaning on every person. So this gets more challenging, but just listen to it. Tune your ears into this. Yeah, why not? I'm representing every person. And then he takes the every person, which is the adjective before the noun, and he turns it into a proper noun. I'm every person. That's my name. So now we've got a proper noun, every person, that's been made out of every person. Are you still with me? This is the really advanced one, guys, so just hang in there, okay? Yeah, why not? I'm representing every person. I'm every person. That's my name. I mean, all I'm saying is what every person, okay? Every person in here is probably thinking, okay. So the motivator says, okay, Mr. Every person. He doesn't say, okay, Mr. Every person. He says, okay, Mr. Every person, because that's the modifier. He's modifying every person into a surname. And then the man comes back and says, just every person is fine. He doesn't say just every person is fine. That would flatline the read. And then he goes, okay, every person, what do you think? And then they go on with the scene. So it sounds a little bit more like, well, I think I'm probably talking for every person here. You're talking for every person here? Yeah, every person. So let me get this straight. You're telling me that you're representing every person. Yeah, why not? I'm representing every person. I'm every person. That's my name. I mean, all I'm saying is what every person here is probably thinking, okay? Okay, Mr. Every person. Just every person is fine. Okay, every person. You read that flat, and the whole thing just goes, and you don't get the lift. Now, this was intentionally written and stylized to highlight this and to complicate it, kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway complicates improv exercises. It's to show you how tricky it can actually get. So when you're reading your script, to just kind of land this bird for you, train your eyes to see repeated words. Train your ears for alliteration, to catch it. When you see the called back words, then say them next to each other. Sometimes they are right next to each other in the copy. Sometimes they're in the same line. Sometimes they're in other parts of the story. That's when you're really good, because you know you've already discussed the Snicker bar. And that's why it's important to eat a Snicker bar. See how I did that? I just called the Snicker bar back from the beginning, and it had some kind of an effect. Now, it wasn't written out. If I had written it out, I wouldn't have structured it that way. It was just on the fly. But that's how you watch for that. And all comics do, especially improvisational comics, they're able to retain the things that have been said. Rappers will do this. They're able to retain what they say and be able to capitalize on the influx or make it rhyme if they're doing, say, spoken word or rapping, that type of thing. So, I just really, really hope this helped you out. Again, take a last look at the graph. You're going to see at the beginning of your story, your line, something's been established that's called back later. It's established again later, which makes it a callback, and that's where you have to stay on top of taking a look at your copy, so your copy doesn't just look like that, but these things start to jump out for you when you're reading lines of dialogue that look like this. They jump out for you like that, and when it gets really tricky and you're looking at that, it can jump out for you like that. So that's referential callbacks, guys. I do trust that that's helping you out and making things more effective. That's not what we want, and that's not what we want right there either. So there's our new technology doing crazy stuff. And I'm going to end the session for you guys. But again, I am Coach Claybanks. If you guys want any further information on this, or you have any questions, you can find me at any of these locations, or you can email info@claybanksstudio.com. Having said all that, I will sign out for now. Coach Claybanks, God bless you guys, and be careful out there. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the applause. I applaud you back. Thank you, guys.